Good morning, everyone. I'm Stephanie Hickswa, the Chancellor of MSU Billings. Welcome to our annual bell ringing ceremony where we recognize and honor Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Given the current landscape, we decided to host our event today online to ensure that we're doing our part to slow the community spread of COVID-19. Thank you for tuning in this morning to remember this important day and celebrate the life and legacy of Martin Luther King Jr. This ceremony reminds us that we stand in solidarity with those who fight for vital human rights, and particularly at this watershed moment in our nation's history. When Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and the Civil Rights Movement brought about those fundamental changes to our country, it really made a difference. It concerns me, though, even though we have seen so many positive changes since then, that issues with systemic racism still persist in our society today. This past year, we witnessed troubling racial unrest throughout our country, from George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, to Sean Reed, and many others. At MSU Billings, our mission is to deliver a transformative education that empowers students from diverse backgrounds to succeed. This means that we must ensure that our university community regards tolerance, diversity, inclusion, and free expression of ideas among its core values. We must strive to do better every day, not just in the wake of a particular incident, but at all times. I encourage each of you to examine your own values and educate yourselves on these issues. Dr. King said, "Change does not roll on the wheels of inevitability, but comes through continuous struggle." We will now hear from some of our state and local leaders in celebration of this important day. Thank you again for joining us today.
Dr. Martin Luther King once said in a sermon, "Love is the only force capable of transforming an enemy into a friend." That simple truth influenced everything Dr. King did as a civil rights leader. And ultimately, it transformed a nation and changed the course of history. Last year, two enemies invaded our shores: the coronavirus and a spirit of political divisiveness that was uniquely malignant and widespread. I don't think the coronavirus will ever be transformed into a friend, but it won't defeat us if we harness the power of love identified by Dr. King to take care of our families, our friends, and our community. In the same way, selfish and angry words cannot prevail against the example of selfless service and a gentle answer that turns away wrath. As we begin this new year, which I'm confident will be a lot brighter than the one we leave behind, I pray that the wisdom and spirit of Dr. King will bring you comfort and help guide all of us in the months ahead.
Well, thanks for inviting me to share a few words as we honor Martin Luther King Jr. In 1776, the Declaration of Independence declared that all men are created equal. 200 years later, Martin Luther King Jr. galvanized the nation and the world as he called for us to live up to that great ideal. This fight came at a great cost. King and his fellow civil rights activists were often jailed and beaten, and King himself gave his life. Yet he never responded to this injustice with violence. Rather than fight with guns or fists, King's weapons were his words, the Constitution, and the Holy Scripture. He helped millions of Americans see that racism and bigotry have no place in a free society. And today we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. as someone who made our country and the world truly a better place. Thank you so much, and God bless.
Greetings from Washington, D.C., and thank you for inviting me to share a few words with you on this Martin Luther King Day. And thank you to Maureen Brack and the MSU Billings community for organizing this event. As you all know, MLK was one of the many civil rights leaders who brought our nation one step closer to equality. And his legacy continues to teach generations of Americans about the importance of civic engagement and how it can be used to reshape our society into one that celebrates acceptance, diversity, and hope for the future. Leaders like Dr. King push Americans to think beyond the status quo and dream of a nation without injustice, where positive change is not only possible but encouraged. That's why a bust of him stands among our nation's greatest leaders in the Capitol Rotunda. And every time I walk by it, I'm reminded of the work that still needs to be done to make his dreams of equality a reality. And that's why every year I'm thrilled to see MSU be honoring his legacy by holding this event. You're encouraging students, faculty, and staff to open their minds to different perspectives. And it's through these tough conversations that we can start to build bridges between folks who don't see eye to eye. And boy, does our country need to build some bridges right now. Dr. King said it best. People fail to get along because they fear each other. They fear each other because they don't know each other. They don't know each other because they have not communicated with each other. So go out there and communicate with each other. Push yourselves to walk a mile in someone else's shoes. Because it's through understanding and acceptance that we're going to make our country a better place to live for everyone who calls it home. Thanks again for inviting me to speak. I hope you all stay healthy and safe.
Martin Luther King Jr. was a minister and leading activist during the 20th century civil rights movement. He was born Michael Luther King Jr. on January 15, 1929 in Atlanta, and later changed his name to Martin. King grew up steeped in religion and activism. His father was a reverend at Ebenezer Baptist Church and a local NAACP leader. A talented student, King skipped 2 grades in high school and entered Morehouse College at age 15. King was skeptical about Christianity as a boy, but later embraced his faith and entered the seminary. While earning a doctorate at Boston University, King met aspiring singer Coretta Scott. They married in 1953 and had 4 children: Yolanda, Martin Luther III, Dexter Scott, and Bernice. King established himself as a rising star in the civil rights movement. After Rosa Parks' arrest in Alabama in December 1955 for refusing to give up her seat to a white passenger, the NAACP chose King to lead the Montgomery bus boycotts. The protests ultimately led to a U.S. Supreme Court decision which outlawed segregation on public buses in Alabama. With civil rights demonstrations emerging all over the country, King helped organize the Southern Christian Leadership Conference to unite them. Inspired by Mahatma Gandhi, King advocated nonviolent protests like boycotts and sit-ins.
King's experience, passion for the cause, and position in the community gave him the credentials to become a leader in the 381-day boycott of the city buses. On December 20th, 1956, the Supreme Court ruled segregated buses to be unconstitutional. This was a major victory for the civil rights cause and proved King's nonviolent methods of protest could yield results. King was now the national face of the civil rights cause. He was jailed over 20 times, was once stabbed in the chest, his house was bombed, and he suffered relentless personal attacks on himself and his family.
One day I was crying profusely, and Mom picked us up from school and asked me, well, what's wrong? And I said, well, the kid said, Daddy's a jailbird. And she explained to me why he was going to jail, that he was really going to jail to make this world a better place for all of God's children. Well, the next day I came back to school with almost a new attitude, being proud of what my father was doing. It was the spirit of love that he exhibited that transformed a lot of lives.
We still have the attitude of love.
He used to say, I love everybody, I'm every man's brother. You may not love me, but that's your issue, not mine.
Dr. King inspired thousands of people through his eloquence and through his fearlessness, especially after his home was firebombed with his wife and his children. They showed through their courage that they were prepared to give their lives to the cause of freedom.
This was the home of Martin Luther King Jr. and his young family from 1954 until 1960. Martin Luther King pretty much said you had to do two things in order to be free. You have to forgive everybody for everything they've ever done to you, and number two, you have to lose your fear of death. He was over at Ralph Abernathy's church and taking up a collection the night the house was bombed, September 30th, 1956. Mary Lucy Williams and Mrs. King were in the living room. The baby Yolanda was in the master bedroom sleeping. And all of a sudden, Mrs. King hears a noise out front. So they ran down the hallway. That blast went off seconds later, and Dr. King said he didn't take a full breath from the time he left that church and got here and found out that his family was not hurt. But in the meantime, 300 to 500 angry black people are here. They have guns and knives and sticks and hoes and shovels and pitchforks. Amid that angry crowd that could have exploded any minute, this young preacher, who was a very, very special human being, came home. And it didn't take him any words to calm those people down. All he did was raise his hand, and it was kind of like, peace be still. Told his people to go home. He who lives by the sword will die by the sword, and we have to love our white brothers and sisters even though they're not loving us back. Go home. He said, God will take care of us. And that's exactly what the people did.
Martin asked us to be calm in the midst of all of the turmoil that was going on.
That was one of the greatest opportunities that he took advantage of. Tell your people not to flare up. Don't fight. We're all right. My family is not hurt. Go on home. And people did.
King worked tirelessly to promote the cause he so strongly believed in. And from 1957 through 1968, he traveled over 6 million miles, delivered 2,500 speeches, wrote 5 books, and dozens of articles. His hard work and ability to communicate earned him such respect that he earned the ear of President John F. Kennedy, who personally met with King. Of all the speeches King delivered, none has stood the test of time like his famous I Have a Dream speech. Symbolically delivered from the steps of the Lincoln Memorial in 1963, in front of 250,000 people, both black and white. King had become such a force in America that he was named Time Magazine's Man of the Year in 1963. A nice achievement indeed. But it paled in comparison when in 1964, he became the youngest man ever to win the Nobel Peace Prize.
Martin Luther King Jr. was an American. He was deeply American. And what's striking to me is that he had more confidence and faith in American democracy, in the Constitution, and in the principles of fairness and opportunity than nearly all of his critics.
King put his life on the line for many of his protests. A 1965 march for voting rights in Selma, Alabama, turned violent when police viciously attacked the protesters in a conflict dubbed Bloody Sunday. Ever determined, King led another Selma demonstration 2 days later. When the marchers reached a bridge blocked by state troopers, they simply knelt down in prayer. King and other leaders persisted, launching a third march days later under the protection of the Alabama National Guard and other marshals ordered by President Lyndon B. Johnson. The power of King's activism compelled Johnson to sign the Civil Rights Act of 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. As the Vietnam War intensified, King focused his movement on what he saw as the 3 major evils of racism, poverty, and militarism. By 1968, King had made many enemies and recognized he might not live to see the fruits of his labor.
While in Memphis to lead a protest march defending the rights of striking garbage workers in April of 1968, King delivered a rousing speech titled, "I've Been to the Mountaintop." It would be his last. Standing on the balcony of his second-floor room at the Lorraine Motel in Memphis, King was shot and killed
by James Earl Ray. King's assassination, however, could not erase his progress or his legacy.
We were watching, all of us, the evening news when it flashed across the screen and on April 4th, 1968, that he had been shot. As we went through the procession, there were so many thoughts that were going through my mind. We had all the emotions. Gosh, what are we going to do now? It was hard, but one of the things that I remember most prominently were the number of people that came into Atlanta, the thousands that came to pay respect. You know, when you see all of these people, you begin to start evaluating, wow, well, maybe what our father was doing is really very, very significant.
In 1983, Ronald Reagan signed a proclamation declaring the third Monday of every January Martin Luther King Jr. Day, a public holiday to celebrate the man and what he stood for.
The modern civil rights era of Martin Luther King is of vital importance, not just in history, but for today, because it shows America tackling a problem that nobody really thought it could handle. And it did that by an extraordinary collection of new heroes coming to the fore to move America forward in freedom. Here we are threatened again in America, and we always will be, with very difficult political problems ahead for our economy and the world ahead of us. And here's an example from the 1950s and 1960s of how America rose to just such a challenge, even though most people thought we couldn't do it. The hardest thing to include when you're trying to do succinct stories are the small stories of people who are not well-known historical figures, but who made a critical difference. The crippled lady with polio who was a cook in St. Augustine, Florida, who came forward when everyone else was too scared to march for freedom because they'd been getting beaten so badly on the streets of St. Augustine, Florida, our oldest city in America, founded 1565, but it was very violently segregated. And Dr. King's people could not find marchers. Well, this lady, Georgia Reed, stood up in the kitchen and said, I will lead the march on my crutches, but you have to take me home to change out of this cooking uniform, because if I'm going to jail, I'm going in my Sunday best.
On this Martin Luther King Day, we are a nation that is divided. We may be, in fact, a nation that is in despair. Despair whether we can be one nation again, one community. A nation not torn apart by violence and division. A nation that rediscovers its democracy and tries to bring everyone along with it. As we consider the ways of moving forward as a country, we still thankfully have the words of Martin Luther King Jr. to guide us. He writes, when our days become dreary with low hovering clouds of despair, let us remember that there is a creative force in this universe working to pull down the gigantic mountains of evil, a power that is able to make a way out of no way and transform dark yesterdays into bright tomorrows. I am speaking of that force which all the great religions have seen as the supreme unifying principle of life, unquote. That religious principle is something that I'm privileged to see play out on the campus in my role as pastor at United Campus Ministry at MSU Billings. MSUB is a microcosm of our country, but small enough that we know each other, we eat together, we take classes together, we talk about the big issues of life together. Here, friendships are forged that cross divides of nation, of religion, of background, of politics. Sometimes I remain pessimistic about our country, but when classes start and I see the MSUB community coming together, I have no right to be. Because our community gives proof that it is possible to come together, that faith in a creative force that builds community is something realized on our campus every semester. This MLK ceremony is an expression of this coming together. So my thanks to all who have participated today and to the Center for Engagement in putting this on. I want to close with a meditation from the Reformed Jewish prayer book. It goes, although we long for harmony, we cannot close our ears to the noise of war or the rasp of hate. We must not forget the grief of yesterday, nor ignore the pain of today. But if there is goodness at the heart of life, then its power is real. Which shall prevail? Moment by moment, we choose between them. If we choose rightfully and often enough, the broken fragments of our world will be restored to wholeness. May we choose and continue to choose rightfully and build community at MSU Billings, in the state of Montana, in our nation, and in our world. Amen.
Today, Americans across the country are honoring the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Hundreds of thousands of Americans will remember and memorialize Dr. King by participating in ceremonies and service projects in their communities. Together, we will honor King's legacy of tolerance, peace, and equality by meeting community needs and making the holiday a day on, not a day off. During his lifetime, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. worked tirelessly toward a dream of equality. He believed in a nation of freedom and justice for all and encouraged all citizens to live up to the purpose and potential of America by uniting and taking action to make this country a better place for everyone to live. Today, we will ring the bell along with thousands across America to celebrate and honor the life of Dr. King. The ringing of the bell symbolizes the quest for peace along with justice, human rights, and social and economic progress for all people. The symbol of the bell also embraces America's historic Liberty Bell, the representation of independence. Montana State University Billings has been commemorating Dr. King's life for over 20 years with a bell ringing ceremony. Today, we want to keep that tradition alive and thank you for joining us. The words of Martin Luther King Jr. have a significant impact in our world today, and at this time, I would like to invite MSUB students to recite the words of Dr. King that impact the most during their pursuit of higher education. Each quote represents the quest for peace, equality, and civic responsibility.
Hello everyone, my name is Emily Phipps, and I am a paramedicine major through City College, and I am representing Student United Way. My MLK quote for today is, "In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends."
My name is Jeffrey Flexing. I'm a junior in the history department, and I represent United Campus Ministry. The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands at times of challenge and controversy.
Hi everyone, my name is Willow Peterson. I'm studying political science, and I represent the organization Heroes. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others?
Hi, my name is Caitlin Gillen. I am a human service major, and I represent Student Activities Board. The function of education is to teach one to think intensively and to think critically. Intelligence plus character. That is the goal of true education.
I'm Eric Brown, and I represent the Veterans Success Center here on campus. Darkness cannot drive out darkness, only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate, only love can do that.
Hi everyone, my name is Charlene Ulmer, and I'm studying criminal justice with a minor in psychology, and today I will be representing the Student Health Ambassadors. There comes a time when one must take a position that is neither safe, nor politic, nor popular, but he must take it because conscience tells him that it is right.
Hi, my name is Erica Smith, and I'm a student worker in the Center for Engagement. My favorite quote by Dr. King is this: Those who are not looking for happiness are the most likely to find it, because those who are searching forget that the surest way to be happy is to seek happiness for others.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now am found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear the hour I first believed. Amazing grace, amazing